Every year, Jehovah's Witnesses host conventions worldwide. Typically held in a stadium, thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses from various regions around the world convene for a 3-day event for, give or take...
Let's see, I need to look at my watch here. 54 hours
of talks, videos, and even a feature film to reinforce Jehovah's Witness doctrine. What we're going to talk about in this video is a symposium. A series of talks interlaced with video dramatizations, all surrounding the subject of patience.
Patience. Be patient.
There are two things I occasionally bother trying to avoid on my channel: clickbait and bitterness. I don't know what this video is going to be called yet, but I imagine it may feature words like disgusting, manipulative, racist, evil. These are not exaggerations, in my opinion, and if you're a Jehovah's Witness watching, I hope you hear me out so I can show you why I feel that way. We'll be looking at clips from the convention, but go to this year's convention yourself and watch the videos to make sure I'm not misrepresenting Watchtower's words here. Full warning though, I am bitter about some of these videos. Usually I try to be more lighthearted and fun, or purely informational, so I want to make my angry XJW bias known here right up top. Watchtower, as you will see in the upcoming clips, paints any critics of the organization as hysterical, screaming, bitter idiots who are unwitting agents of Satan. These talks and videos are designed to keep its members afraid, subservient, and isolated.
Alone, afraid, discouraged.
So even though there's an assumed trigger warning when talking about any doomsday-adjacent religious propaganda, I'm going to specifically give a content warning here. If you are being shunned by Jehovah's Witness family and friends, if you're a person of color, or just care about racial injustice, if you care about things, this is probably going to be a little enraging, no matter how silly I make their voices.
Symposium.
Let's roll the first nightmare.
Now, what do you think? Why do we need patience, like Elijah? Well, because we face opposition and persecution too. What are you dealing with? Are you being bullied at school? Treated unfairly at work? Do you worry about persecution that might come from governmental authorities in the future? Or perhaps you've been opposed by someone that you love and who's supposed to love you. Maybe when you were learning the truth, somebody in your home, your marriage mate, did everything in their power to stop you from studying, stop you from going to meetings, and especially stop you from going in the ministry. When we face any of these forms of opposition, it leaves us feeling like Elijah felt.
Alone, afraid, discouraged, as if we can go on no more.
Right off the bat, Watchtower is leaning into classic cult thinking, us versus them. The hokey Bible dramatization shown before this clip is about Elijah running away from Jehovah's enemies.
There was more work to do, and that meant facing my enemies again.
That word, enemies, is important. Anyone who tries to tell you anything not exclusively positive things about Watchtower is an enemy of Jehovah. If your spouse tries to stop you from joining a cult, that person is an opposer who's trying to keep you from joining the one true religion. But I also think it's worth pointing out this line.
Do you worry about persecution that might come from governmental authorities in the future?
He says might, but he means will. Watchtower doctrine states that soon, a period of time known as the Great Tribulation will begin. The United Nations will ban religion worldwide, and Jehovah's Witnesses will be the only group who stands up to it and continues preaching and worshiping. Because of that, members will be forced to hide in basements to worship in secret, with secret knocks and covert communications between the branch and local elders, like Tinker Tailor Soldier Circuit Overseer. Also, even though they'll have to secretly worship in bunkers and basements, they'll simultaneously be asked to publicly preach a message of judgment about the imminent arrival of Armageddon, which seems like a conflict of interest to me, but what do I know?
When our message changed from good news to judgment, he was telling everyone that it would make problems for us.
Now, if you knew that a family member of yours was going to join a group that believed all of that stuff we just talked about, in addition to being willing to die for the cause by refusing a blood transfusion, you're probably going to try to stop them.
Or perhaps you've been opposed by someone that you love and who's supposed to love you. Maybe when you were learning the truth, somebody in your home, your marriage mate, did everything in their power to stop you from studying, stop you from going to meetings, and especially stop you from going in the ministry.
These fantastical doomsday scenarios are nearly indistinguishable from the end-time claims of the People's Temple or QAnon. And Watchtower knows this, which is why, as they speak in soft ASMR prequel Jedi tones, their primary goal is to scare members into staying. All this brings us back to us v. them. Preaching door-to-door with magazines and videos about impending Armageddon is going to ostracize you from mainstream society. It will make you, to cite Glasses Guy,
alone, afraid, discouraged.
Increasingly, the only solace a person can find is within the group, with other members who experience that same ostracization. This is one of the main appeals of conventions, being among thousands of people who agree with you, hearing talks and watching highly produced videos reassuring you that you're already right. It's the world that's gone crazy.
Here's the thing about patience, my brother. You're gonna need some right now. Because this story goes back more than 60 years.
England is a place of change. Over the past decade, thousands upon thousands of immigrants have arrived in our country from overseas.
Lucille and I were like many others who had come from the islands during those years, looking to start a new life. We lived with Lucille's brother who came here long before us. He was so good to us. He helped us find work and made us feel right at home. Until we started studying the Bible, that is.
These people twist the Bible to say whatever they want.
Edwin, they are good people who just want to help. That's
I've warned you about these people before. They may seem good, but remember.
What tastes sweet in the mouth can burn the belly.
Daddy always taught us to worship God. We worship Him in spirit and in truth. You know that.
No.
This is the truth, Edwin.
No, it's their truth.
Edwin, there could only be one truth.
Stay away from them.
Why can't you just
Stay
see that though?
away from them.
You give this up, or you find somewhere else to live.
So, a few things about this so far. One, nobody's going to scream and yell at you for just studying the Bible.
Until we started studying the Bible, that is.
They might get a bit concerned if you're studying the Bible with a religious group that has a frequently asked questions article on their website about whether or not they're a cult. Or if a group routinely lets pregnant women die of blood loss because they think Bronze Age farmers knew what blood transfusions were. Or if a group shuns former members and asks recruits to put on the new personality. Or if a group is routinely in court for covering up child abuse done by its spiritually appointed men. If someone you loved was joining a group like that, you might get really scared. You did a few minutes of Googling and found this out pretty easily, and you're angry that your loved one won't do that same searching. But the reason your loved one won't just, check online is because of videos like this. Videos that paint any opposition to Jehovah's Witnesses as irrational and based on lies, misunderstandings, and Satan, the evil ventriloquist. Not to mention videos and articles produced by the group that conflate false reporting with negative reporting. This that we just watched is just a dramatization. It's made up, fictional. But if you study with Jehovah's Witnesses, you are likely going to get pushback from people who care about you and don't want you to join a group that's recognized by every respected expert in the field as a high-control, high-demand religion.
Jehovah will help you, Winston.
I know, Rory, but what is he waiting for? I mean, if Jehovah really cares about us, why doesn't he help us? I'm not sure that we can keep doing this.
Another weird thing that will continue throughout all these videos is the prospective Jehovah's Witness will question whether or not Jehovah is loving, but will never question whether Jehovah exists.
If Jehovah really cares about us, why doesn't he help us?
A more reasonable explanation to the problem of evil and suffering is not there's an invisible omnipresent entity who's aware of human suffering but does nothing for some reason, but rather, there is no God. There's no invisible omnipresent entities. But that's obviously not an acceptable question to a religious organization, even in a fictional scenario, especially a group that wants members to believe that there is a God, and his name is Jehovah, and you can be his friend, his little buddy, his pal, and he's aware of human suffering, but is allowing it to continue because of a 4D cosmic chess match with Satan. But also he does intervene sometimes if you pray enough. Maybe.
Do you know who felt exactly as you feel, Winston?
Elijah.
Elijah? The prophet? How's that?
Well, Elijah was so discouraged because of the opposition that he faced because of his loyalty to Jehovah. At one point, he was so worn out and depressed that he prayed to Jehovah, "It is enough."
See, if you view the account of Elijah as fictional or even allegorical, you can't fall back on the simple comfort that a long time ago, some other guy was feeling sad once, and he relied on Jehovah, and it made it okay. This entire symposium is dedicated to painting the members as victims, under vicious attacks by enemies.
Rory helped us to see how Jehovah strengthened Elijah to face his enemies.
In reality, this couple had no reason to view their own family as enemies until Watchtower told them to, or rather, convinced them to. If you're a witness watching this, this is one of the many reasons you'll hear critics describe witnesses as a group that divides families. Relatives become unbelieving relatives, and witnesses will be reminded often they need to be careful about how and how often they associate with unbelieving relatives. And because the organization becomes your whole personality, witnesses can't separate criticism of doctrine or leadership from criticism of themselves as individuals. So what was the solution to this imagined persecution?
Learning the truth meant we were cast out and had to find a new home. But Elijah learned to wait on Jehovah, and so did we.
Patience. Rely on Jehovah. A process that looks suspiciously like doing nothing other than praying to an invisible entity and hoping that invisible Holy Spirit gives you strength to endure until, well, soon. Very soon.
Jehovah foretold that sickness and death will not continue forever, but are temporary now and will soon end as the new world arrives.
This dramatization says to be set in the 1950s. In a fun article that Watchtower published in the 1950s, in fact, the 1958 Watchtower, April 15th, said, "The United Nations belongs to this old world, which is facing a disastrous end very soon." But it turns out, whether this couple joined the group in 1953 or 2023, they would still be in the final part of the last days, eagerly awaiting the United Nations to turn against them.
Now, it's true, when we're undergoing severe stress and we're feeling drained physically and emotionally because of persecution, all we want Jehovah to do is to make the persecution stop.
And he will.
But he's asking us to be patient. And he will give us what we need to be patient. He'll give us anything we need to continue serving him faithfully and to continue relying on him. It's as if we were drowning, and he gives us a life preserver until he brings us to shore safely.
What an accidentally insightful look into the misery this group is capable of causing. You live your life drowning, occasionally receiving a life preserver to cling onto in choppy waters, hoping someday, some decade, some century, God will magically pull you to shore. No matter what you do, though, don't try to swim yourself. God has good reasons for wanting you to feel like you're drowning all the time.
If you need support, just as Winston and Lucille had Rory and Kate, ask for support.
From here on out, the Watchtower speakers are going to talk about Winston and Lucille as if they're real people, even though they're fictional characters in a dramatization. This is one of many ways that Watchtower is able to make their emotionally manipulative propaganda feel like doctrinal truths, despite being an invention from a No Girls Allowed committee in a compound in upstate New York.
Why did Micah need patience? Well, he prophesied during very turbulent times in Israel and in Judah. Injustice was widespread. Notice how he describes these conditions in Micah chapter 7.
Now, if you ask Jehovah's Witnesses if they're modern-day prophets, they'll probably answer no. But first of all, Watchtower publications in the past have said exactly that. And even if the speaker doesn't specifically say it here, this entire symposium is dedicated to comparing prophets of ancient Israel to modern-day Jehovah's Witnesses.
Jehovah's ancient prophets faced trials that tested their patience. What helped them accomplish their assignments? How can we imitate them today? This morning's symposium will consider 7 examples of faith and patience.
I'm not showing much of the Bible dramas in detail because they're pretty boring and their relevance is restated in the modern-day dramas, but Watchtower portrays the prophets as referring to their prophesying as an assignment.
But the nation refused to listen. It was a difficult assignment.
This is very much a modern Jehovah's Witness phrase.
What helped them accomplish their assignments?
You get assigned a talk or a demonstration on the weekly meeting. You're assigned to work a territory in the ministry. Everything in the organization is an assignment, from cleaning the Kingdom Hall toilets to being a pioneer. By inserting modern JW language into the mouths of biblical characters, Watchtower is intentionally trying to make it seem like Jehovah's Witnesses are a direct continuation of the true worship of ancient Israel and first-century Christians. This is one of the reasons a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses develop narcissistic tendencies, and why ex-members have to go to a lot of therapy to undo that stuff. Micah finishes his monologue by saying that despite pressure from the world, the preaching work he did would be remembered for generations.
I delivered warnings, yes, but I also helped others learn that Jehovah promised brighter times ahead. What I had the privilege to write down will help generations to come.
The implication is that the modern preaching work of Jehovah's Witnesses is of equal importance. It is, according to Watchtower, after all, the most important work taking place on Earth today.
Preaching the good news is the most important work being done on Earth today.
Doctors, firefighters, they're fine, I guess, but in the new system, we won't even need those things. Being a Jehovah's Witness is the most important thing in the entire world.
The greatest honor anyone can have is to be called a servant of the Most High God, Jehovah.
That gives its members an inflated sense of self-importance, to say the least. But witnesses are also frequently reminded how worthless, sinful, and deserving of death they are. This sort of extreme hot and cold treatment by the leadership is also a high-control classic.
Well, we live in a world that is full of hatred and injustice. How can this make us feel? Well, it reminds me when we visited an open-air market in a large city. There were signs everywhere that stated, "Beware of pickpocketers, guard your belongings." Now, as tourists, we understood that we were the targets. So everyone that approached us, walked near us, and especially behind us, made us anxious, unsure of who to trust.
Now, that's how we might feel in this world full of hatred and injustice.
We could be targets because of what we look like or where we come from. This can make us feel anxious, unsure of who to trust. We may become especially distressed, even angry, if we or a family member are treated unjustly. So how can we cope?
Here's another example of mixing extreme self-importance with extreme anxiety. Satan is the ruler of this world, and the world is out to get you because you're serving Jehovah. So it's reasonable to be suspicious and untrusting of everything and everyone outside the group. This is how people get sucked down conspiracy rabbit holes like QAnon. If you can't trust any reporting that challenges your biases, if you can't trust any authority figure except the one authority figure you happen to think is going to save the world, if you can't trust your family, if you can't trust anyone suggesting you're wrong, then wouldn't you know it, you have to trust the only people constantly reassuring you that you're already right. People who lose family members to Q often describe the experience of their family becoming increasingly withdrawn, accusatory, angry, and volatile, while at the same time accusing everyone else of doing those things instead. Throughout these videos, you'll see this kind of projection. It's the outside world that's delusional, angry, and unreasonable.
Feeling alone, distressed, afraid, depressed.
Feeling more like a frightened child than a prophet of the Most High God. Praying to die.
Jehovah's Witnesses are the only ones with any sense. Also, the United Nations will turn against us any day now, we promise. A quick warning, this video is the most disgusting part of the whole ordeal, and I'm not going to do any funny edits to it because there's nothing even unintentionally funny about it, and I think it needs to speak for itself.
The arrival of so many foreigners had caused tension for many years.
Something new and ugly raises its head in Britain.
And by the 1960s, we were living in turbulent times.
Some of the gangs who break windows or throw bottles or burning torches have arrived by car.
This is an injustice! Look at all this! Should bricks be thrown through our windows? Just because we work here, Winston? Should our people be met with violence in the street? Just because of the colour of our skin? You're just going to let them do this to you?
I want to turn the other cheek, Maxwell.
Why? So they can slap you again. You need to stand up. This is the only way we can make a difference.
This weighed heavy on my heart. And then...
Hey, what happened?
It struck even closer to home. My Lucille was horribly mistreated at work because of the color of her skin.
And he spit in my face.
Enough is enough. How much more of this we have to take? It's too much, Lucy.
It was hard not to dwell on every slight, every insult hurled at us for no reason. I couldn't quiet my mind. Until I turned to Jehovah.
This dramatization is playing with the real-world civil rights movements in the UK in the 1960s. Because of an economic decline, black workers were often the first to lose their jobs, and those who could work essentially had to work double for less money than they were making before. Jehovah's Witnesses are forbidden from getting involved in anything the group deems political, like civil rights or social justice issues. So, of course, the worldly person with his beard and Black Lives Matter leaflet and passion to not be treated like garbage by white people is portrayed as a misguided fool for thinking that getting involved in the movement will change anything. The real answer, it's said, is to wait on Jehovah.
Instead of dwelling on every injustice, I let the ministry give me peace of mind.
What go on, Winston?
Everything Irie, Maxwell. Then a good morning.
Is it good? You decide to do something, brother?
Yes. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Let me show you how Jehovah will put an end to injustice.
Well, while Jehovah was busy doing nothing, activists like Paul Stevenson decided to see if they could somehow manage to achieve equality without the divine intervention of Armageddon. In 1963, Paul Stevenson led a boycott against a racist public bus company. To cite blackhistory.org, the Bristol Bus Company operated a color bar that refused employment to blacks or Asians. Stevenson, a 26-year-old teacher, organized the 60-day bus boycott on the city's buses. Thousands of people supported the bus boycott, and the news of racism made headlines. By the 28th of August 1963, the bus company lifted the employment color ban. Ironically, this was the same day that Martin Luther King Jr. made his I Have a Dream speech. So, somehow, without Jehovah's Holy Spirit, Black and Asian UK residents were able to organize, inspire, and enact real-world changes that made the world slightly less crappy and racist. While people of color fought for equality in the United Kingdom and United States, often being beaten and losing their lives for the greater good, here's what fictional Jehovah's Witnesses Winston and Lucille were teaching. The 1967 April 15th Watchtower says, "The danger of sudden death is staring you in the face. That is exactly the case with the warning that we speak of here. And there are reasons why it can truly be said to be the most urgent warning ever given. It is to come within the generation that has already seen 2 world wars, and it is only a few short years ahead of us." What can you even say when it comes to propaganda like this? Neutrality always benefits the oppressor. Because you know who else desperately wanted Black and Asian people to not stand up for their rights? Every single racist person, every racist politician, religious leader, school teacher, and bus company benefited from this organization that was at the time entirely run by white men, telling their black members not to get involved. It goes a little beyond not getting involved, though. Watchtower has a history, and present, obviously, of saying some, to put it delicately, racist-ass bullshit. So what are they saying around the time Winston and Lucille were going through their fictional trials? Let's go back to good old 1953 and look at the Couple Awake articles. South Africa's whole color policy is conditioned by this fact and fear. 80% of her population is black. If the color bar is breached, what new dike can stop a black flood from overflowing and destroying the civilization with which white men have displaced the wilderness? And the April 22nd, 1953 Awake says, "When all traits are considered, it is safer to marry a person near one's own age, of one's own race, and of similar interests, ideals, and beliefs." Now you might think that was old light at the time. Surely by the 60s things had changed. Well, in a 1960 questions from readers about whether interracial marriage was acceptable, the article began by saying there was nothing biblically wrong with it. But in many parts of the earth, there is still much racial discrimination, and entering such a marriage may result in restricting the Christian's opportunities for preaching the good news of the kingdom. Is it truly love, or chiefly physical attraction? You can't shame the shameless, so there's not really anything I can say here to change anything, but I'd really recommend some excellent videos from some black content creators like XJW Critical Thinker, Jegsit 2020, and A Regular Pioneer, who all have videos about why this organization has a racist history and is actively detrimental to people of color. One last thing. Winston says racial discrimination in this system of things will only get worse.
All this hatred, discrimination, it is only gonna get worse in these last days, Lucy.
So, sound off in the comments. What do you think? Would you, as a black person, rather live in 1960 in the United States or United Kingdom, or 2023? Racism is still a massive issue, one that has existed probably from the beginning of humankind. But now black people can vote, marry people of whatever race or gender they choose, hold positions of office up to and including being the president. Instead of going from bad to worse, the world has gone from bad to less bad. But for Jehovah's Witnesses, picking a side is a sin and a spiritual crime, punishable by reproval or disfellowshipment. The elders can discipline members for non-neutral activity. Anything short of God's intervention is not enough, so don't even bother. I hate this. I really, really hate this. And I know it might be a little cringy to go off on all this stuff, but I got a passion in my heart. I don't know. I'm in a weird mood.
Have you ever preached weeks on end with little or no response? Imagine doing so month after month, year after year for 60 years. That was the patience of the prophet Hosea.
This is a very easy to imagine scenario for every Jehovah's Witness. Based on the group's hours versus conversions, it takes statistically like tens of thousands of hours. I should have pulled up the number. I'll put it on the screen. To convert a single person. Realistically, most witnesses may go their entire lives without ever having a Bible student progress to the point of baptism. Watchtower knows this. They've got the numbers, but it's to their benefit if their members feel that they're constantly falling ever so short and could be doing better if only they dedicate a little more time to the organization's bottom line.
So ask yourself, how am I doing spiritually? Am I happy with my attendance at Christian meetings? Do I participate by sharing meaningful comments as able? How about my personal study of the Bible? Let me examine my involvement in the ministry. Could I do better in preparing for my return visits? Do I conduct any Bible studies with interested ones? If so, am I content with what I am doing? In effect, you're asking yourself, is my best good enough?
I'm not going to go over this section in too much detail because I've already written like 3,000 words so far over like 5 minutes of video. And there's more to get to. To briefly review this part, Winston and Lucille are faced with the classic JW scenario of thinking perhaps they should try and make more money to raise their child. But it fails because any pursuit outside the organization is worthless and dangerous. So they decide to stay poor and subservient. Patient, to their publishing company's corporate overlords. It's this next video where I fully lost my mind and descended into madness.
It was a difficult assignment, but it wasn't my only one. Along with our prophetic work, my wife and I had another important assignment.
Raising our children to love Jehovah.
Even just having a kid is getting an assignment. An assignment. You know, the kind of busy work you get from your boss at Business Industries Incorporated. So the assignment in question is raising our children to love Jehovah.
And we were still working hard to raise Terence to love Jehovah in a tough environment. He was growing so fast. And we were doing our best. But you know, not all dangers come at you with a hostile face.
Terence, you're one of the best players in the school, which is why the county manager wants you to try out for the program. Just take the form home, think it over. You see, for people like us, opportunities like this don't come around every day. Think about it.
What you say? Do what now?
Well, it's to apply for the County Youth Programme. I mean, Coach says I definitely have what it takes.
Listen, Terence, I know you love to play. I do too, but we live a different life. We can't let a game get in the way of more important
it's more than just
things,
a game, okay? There aren't enough players who look like me on the pitch. But what if I can make a difference? You know, not just for the team, but for the community.
It was something we hadn't heard before. We didn't know what was going on inside.
Where is all this coming from?
You guys just don't understand.
But it gave us a look at the man he could become without Jehovah.
Wow. So who would this kid be without Jehovah? An incredible athlete who's able to inspire other minorities to pursue their dreams. Unless you're a Jehovah's Witness, the parents' concern here makes genuinely no sense. Having a talented, gifted child who wants to help and inspire people and aspires to greatness is basically every parent's dream. But Winston already stated the problem. We live a different life.
I know you love to play. I do too, but we live a different life.
This is one of those things that will have any non-JWs cringing, but witnesses watching this at the convention will most likely be nodding their heads. Being different, even when it's irrational and detrimental to your own happiness, is a badge of honor. Jehovah doesn't want you to seek great things for yourself or get caught up in worldly pursuits, which is very convenient for the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses when you think about it. It just so happens that in 2011, I believe, the governing body discovered that when Jesus mentioned a faithful and discreet slave, he was talking about them. That's very convenient, considering they were already the figureheads of the organization and had free room and board and medical care and power over 8 million people. It would have been a bit of a problem if they discovered that the faithful and discreet slave was, as every credible Bible scholar outside of Watchtower tends to agree, a parable and not a prophecy. If that was the case, I guess they'd have to resign and find jobs or file for Medicare. They just keep stumbling upon such good fortune, the governing body. As we can see from the video dramatizations here, every other Jehovah's Witness on Earth is constantly beset by misfortune, trials, and tragedy, often losing their jobs, support from family members, going to prison, or losing their life in service to the group. A particularly convenient thing the governing body has is free labor and monetary donations. These videos we've been watching, for example, Watchtower doesn't have to pay the film crew, the actors, craft services, set builders, prop designers, any of the normal expenses associated with making a film, and they can use that unpaid labor to make videos that encourage other members to give the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society their time, money, and labor.
The donation information page on jw.org can be accessed via the JW Library app or on the website.
What would be inconvenient is, say, members spending less time finding recruits and more time pursuing their talents and passions. If someone wants to become an athlete, that's going to take a lot of time away from doing Kingdom Hall maintenance, preaching, and building. And worse yet, the person might become famous and start to speak publicly about how their Jehovah's Witness parents tried to stop them from doing what they love. Heck, even some people just married to a famous soccer player could make a damning documentary about the abuse, manipulation, and ostracization they faced as a Jehovah's Witness. And if that documentary was incredibly popular and well-received and caused a small media firestorm about the group shunning practices, well, Watchtower might be in the awkward position of having to delete some of their videos from the program that's already been seen by thousands of JWs worldwide. These videos, to be precise.
Mom's disfellowshipping still feels so raw.
Elsa, please speak up. I miss you so much. I just want to hear your voice.
It's such a struggle. I miss her. She taught me the truth. Gave me a stable life. She was my closest friend. What's the harm in just calling once in a while? To chat. Maybe I can even help her to come back to Jehovah.
Abel was essentially a spiritual orphan, but
Regardless of what his parents chose, he listened to Jehovah and patiently waited on him to fulfill his promises.
I never thought of it that way. What has Jehovah promised me if I patiently wait? Spiritual brothers?
Now, if you're a witness who's already had your convention, you may have seen these videos if you went sometime in early May, but if you happen to go to a convention, say, any time after the day after this documentary about Rebecca Vardy aired, you didn't see them or won't see them. I don't think any video the organization has made shows quite so clearly how self-serving and manipulative the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society is. This is a group that manages to turn a parent's natural pride for their child's ambition into fear. If you do this, you're a bad parent. And I'm willing to bet you wouldn't feel comfortable telling your worldly coworkers that you told your kid not to try out for the soccer team after the coach said he was the best player in school because he could, preach more. Because a part of you knows somewhere deep down that this is unreasonable. It's wrong. If you really trusted in Jehovah, you would trust him to guide your child, just as he guided you. But a part of you knows Jehovah isn't enough, because in this organization, he never quite seems to be enough, now does he? Find and replace any mention of the word Jehovah in this convention with the word Watchtower, and it starts to make a whole lot more sense.
Are there ways that you can include your children in the things that you have to do for Jehovah? And that way, we can have more opportunities for them to see their parents' faith up close, even in difficult circumstances. Jehovah wants children to see how their parents trust in him, even when times are hard.
The almighty, timeless entity who is capable of creating stars, suns, and planets would surely be above such petty human grievances as, if Dan joins the soccer team, he won't be able to give me as many hours in the ministry. And weirdly, the organization itself acknowledges that it doesn't always work out, and that children have the responsibility to make the truth their own. So, what's the point then, really, in putting your kid through all that? What's the point of trapping your child with a life he may later resent if all the control may not even do anything? Members will do it because, mostly, they're told to do it. That's it. Witnesses will swear up and down that they don't follow men, they follow Jehovah. But they don't think you can serve Jehovah without following the men. So, it's just a lie.
He did just so. In fact, in the examples we've mentioned, they all did just so. The direction might not have been what they expected, but they humbly made the mental turn, so to speak, and they followed the divine guidance wherever it was taking them.
Some may say unity of belief, you're brainwashed. Well, we do agree that our thinking has been washed clean from the complicated doctrines that have evolved since Jesus walked the earth.
Because the obedience that we develop today will help us to obey life-saving instructions that we will receive from God's organization in the future. When the nations attack us and the war of Armageddon follows, showing obedience will be our protection.
You are not alone in navigating your way. Jehovah is where he has always been, at the helm, guiding his people. The only difference is, today, Jehovah is providing direction through his faithful and discreet slave. And it is due to our limited understanding that at times the direction may appear to be a bit unusual. Nonetheless, you have followed that direction, no matter what it was, no matter where it was taking you. And for that, we want to say thank you.
If you're a young one being raised as a Jehovah's Witness watching this, join the soccer team. Watchtower gets to write the endings of these videos, so of course the solution to this problem is not the parents realizing that they're being doomsday fanatics who have been proclaiming Armageddon since the 1950s themselves, while being stuck in a group that's now been preaching that message for well over 100 years. In a notion of religions and self-proclaimed prophets who have been proclaiming the end of the world since the invention of language. No, it ends like this.
To me, it is always the scene.
You will seldom hear me mention it under any other name. In my eyes, it eclipses and predominates the whole of the
symposium.
It's the crown in the crown jewels of the whole sordid affair. The scene combines all the worst aspects of this fucking
symposium
and compresses it down into a solid diamond of shit.
We created more opportunities to give him the time and space to express himself from the heart.
You know, like I said, I love the truth, and there's nothing that makes me even happier. But when I play...
You see all these weeds here? You want to pull one out, you pull it out, another one just pop out where it used to be.
And even though we already had a regular family worship, we dug deeper into God's word and tried hard to make the truth real to him.
Sheikh Jashub was old enough in the days of Ahaz to accompany his father when Isaiah delivered a message to that king. Wow, I didn't know all this about Isaiah.
He was busy as a prophet, but they served Jehovah together as a family.
So, are you gonna take me around to witness to the Prime Minister, Dad?
My son, I would be proud to take you with me anywhere.
The solution was, wouldn't you know it, inundating their child with more family worship, more pressure to stay close to the religion, more one-on-one conversations with his dad where he tells him not to pursue his talents, which I can say from experience never makes you hate your own father. And the child decided to not give up his dreams. No, not quite, but have different dreams. Dreams of wearing a suit and doing free labor for a publishing company, where soon, very soon, he'll be in a paradise Earth where he can play soccer to his heart's content without making his parents yell at him. There's more to this convention and this symposium, but that's about all I can stand. I don't plan on doing any more convention rebuttals this year, at least not in this format, because it really is just a bit too triggering for me. You can probably tell that last video in particular brought up some traumatic memories and resentments of my own parents telling me pretty much the exact same thing. The reality is, I was a lot like this kid, for a while. I was told by my favorite English teacher when I was in high school that I was the best writer in his class, and he encouraged me to start taking higher level courses, which of course I didn't do because I had to put Jehovah first. But he submitted an essay I wrote to the local paper where it was published. And my parents at first were so excited. My mom bought a bunch of copies to show our friends, but when I eventually sat my parents down and told them, full of nerves, that I was going to pursue being a writer, my dad said the exact same thing soccer kids' dad said. Where is this coming from? They were afraid of the person I was going to become without Jehovah. When I helped my friend write a screenplay for his senior project, and my parents saw the film, the first thing they said was that they were worried that I was going to get noticed and be tempted to do it for a living. So I didn't quite get a "good job, son." I got a "we're worried, son, please stop." So I did. I was afraid of my father, in a lot of ways. But more than his temper, I was worried about his disappointment. The first Jehovah's Witness who ever told me I was talented and I should pursue my dreams was not my mom, or my dad, or even my sister. It was Christina, my wife. I told her with embarrassment that I wanted to be a writer, that as long as we were married in this system, and I assured her and myself that this in no way would interfere with my spiritual routine, of course, that I would be striving to publish something someday. If you want to know how we continue to make our marriage work, it's because we've always believed in each other, even when we believed in Jehovah, or thought we did anyway. She told me early on that she wished she could go back to college to be a social worker. That was her dream. And now she is in college, top of her class, doing exactly that. And well, I write scripts for YouTube videos, so I can't say leaving the group will give you the best life ever, but suppressing your natural passions, abilities, and talents is the worst life ever. If you're that person now, if you're drowning in that feeling that your parents will only love you if you serve Jehovah, and Jehovah's not throwing you that life raft you keep hearing so much about, it's not that they don't love you, as hard as that is for me to say that. It's that they don't know how. They know how to love the version of you they hope to mold you to become. The version Watchtower keeps telling them you will become, if they just preach at you hard enough. They only think they feel this way, because they're told that's how they feel. Look at how much, just during this convention, the speakers will tell witnesses how they already feel.
What a powerful
video that was.
Thank you, brothers, for those faith-strengthening talks.
This exciting drama. Did you catch the wise words of our brother Winston? in his beautiful accent.
That's so encouraging, Brother Caracas. Thank you for your fine example of reliance on Jehovah.
So the only way they'll learn to love the real you is if you show them who that is. Become the real you. Okay, sorry if that was like pretentious, but...
Now, have you ever accidentally walked into a bush full of thorns? It's a terrible experience. It painfully sticks to whatever part of your body it comes into contact with.
But we have to admit, while it may be very easy for us to see the benefits of showing patience when we think about fruit, it can be very challenging to show patience when actual lives are involved, especially when it is our own.
The remnant of spiritual Israel, including the brothers on the governing body at that time, will be with us when this coalition attacks us. Now, having these faithful brothers at our side will certainly give us an added measure of inner calmness and peace that will help us to get through the initial phase of the attack of that fierce coalition of nations.
When a classroom full of students take a math course, like algebra, at the end of the class, no one accuses them of being brainwashed when they all end up united in their understanding.
The remnant of spiritual Israel, including the brothers on the governing body at that time, will be with us when this coalition attacks us. Now, having these faithful brothers at our side will certainly give us an added measure of inner calmness and peace that will help us to get through the initial phase of the attack of that fierce coalition of nations. But then, at some point during the attack by Gog of Magog, Jesus will send out his angels to gather all the remaining spiritual Israelites worldwide, and they will be raised to heaven. That event will mean a big change for us on earth. We will face our enemies without the anointed brothers at our side. Yet, even so, according to Luke 21, verse 28, we will stand up straight and lift up our heads. Now, why will we not fear? Because we know that the departure of the anointed ones for heaven indicates that our rescue is imminent. Jesus and the angels and the 144,000 brothers of Christ will form the heavenly army that comes to deliver us from the coalition of nations. Now, just think about the emotions that the anointed ones will feel for us as they come